I guess the thing I remember most about the 1960s was the death of Martin Luther King. I had vivid memories of seeing his daughter with her head on the lap of her mother as they attended the funeral. Started listening to R&B, The Temptations, The Spinners, Smokey Robinson and the Miracles, Diana Ross and the Supremes. And that's because I had an older sister, and that's really what she listened to. Currently, I have to admit, I listen to a little bit of everything. Still R&B, some rap, pop music. I have a teenager, and smooth jazz. I grew up in the 60s. I was really a small child, so a lot of my memories are reflections of my family and, overheard conversations. 2010, I'm the adult. Cameron's listening to my conversations. It's funny how what was old is now new, and what is new is now old. So a lot of the things are being repeated. A lot of the oldies music has come back. I was a part of a generation where black people were being more empowered to do things, and were just more excited and more, comfortable in being black. 2010, the difference is I'm the adult, and now my daughter is listening to my conversation, and I think that she has realized the importance of being proud to be an African American young lady. What I remember that's different, used to be able to play outside in the 60s, jump through, sit on the steps, the ice cream truck, being safe, being free to be a child. Not so much in 2010. I think children stay in the house. I think they're less social with one another. I really didn't know that there was a race issue in the 1960s for a long time. I guess maybe till, maybe till about 1970. Because I lived in a household where, being black, we were embraced. We were happy to be who we were. We lived our life to the fullest. I had a great life. My mother and father. My father worked. My mother was a stay-at-home mom. She walked me to school. She made lunch for me when I came home. I had a wonderful life. I don't believe race played a part in my growing up in the 1960s. I lived in an integrated neighborhood. My dad worked. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, so she walked me to school, picked me up at lunchtime, made lunch, walked me back to school. I was free to, skate in the street, play jump rope, walk up to the pool in the summer. I guess maybe I just lived in a good area of the city where it wasn't really as much of an issue. The store owner, Miss D, we all went over there and you could talk to her for hours. The lady across the street, Miss Harris, was black. Hers was Harris Hen House. You could do the same thing. I had a wonderful upbringing in the 60s, and I don't believe race was much of an issue for me, but I was a child.
There are many Americans who believe that in our manner of questioning or seeking your attention, that we're subjecting you to some abuse or a lack of respect.
Well, you're subject me to some abuse, but not to any lack of respect, I don't.
Mr. President, in the 1960 campaign, you used to say that it was time for America to get moving again. The reason I asked you the question, Mr. President, is that the Republican National Committee recently adopted a resolution saying you were pretty much of a failure.
I'm sure it was passed unanimously.
As a former member of the House of Representatives and the Senate, sir, how do you feel about proposals to increase the size of the House from the present number of 435?
Well, as a former member of the House, I would feel that it should be left to the members of the
House of Representatives.
Mr. President, I'd like to ask you a two-part question. Do you think that Mr. Nixon should run for governor of California? And as a politician, Mr. President, what do you think of the advisability of a political party giving a defeated candidate a second chance at the presidency?
Well, I would think in answer to your first question, if Mr. Nixon asked my view as a fellow practitioner of the follower of the political profession, I'd be glad to give him my opinion, as I do have an opinion on the matter. But the second, I think that history is filled with the case of men who've been defeated for offices, who've continued their public service, and I think we've seen it very much in the last few years. I'm sure we'll see it in the next years.
Mr. President, the Democratic platform in which you ran for election promises to work for equal rights for women, including equal pay, to wipe out job opportunity discriminations. Now, you have made efforts on behalf of others. What have you done for the women according to the promises of the platform?
Well, I'm sure we haven't done enough, and I must say I am a strong believer in equal pay for equal work, and I think that we ought to do better than we're doing, and I'm glad that you reminded me of it, Mr. President.
Mr. President, Congressman Alger of Texas today criticized Mr. Salinger as a, quote, young and inexperienced White House publicity man, end quote. I questioned the advisability of having him visit the Soviet Union. I wonder if you have any comments.
I know there are always some people who feel that Americans are always young and inexperienced, and foreigners are always able and tough and great negotiators. But now he also, as I saw the press, said that Mr. Salinger's main job was to increase my standing in the Gallup poll. Having done that, he's now moving on to improve our communication.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, visitors who go out to visit Lincoln Park on East Capitol Street are dismayed to find it a slum. Congress has authorized, and the National Council of Negro Women will erect there a memorial stadium and a statue of the great woman educator, Mary Bethune. Now the transit company proposes to put an 8-lane freeway between the park and the Capitol, cutting it off. Could you inquire into that and see if the freeway could be put further out beyond the park?
Yes, I will. Fine.
Mr. President.
You're very gentle today, Miss Craig. I guess this chimpanzee who was flying in space took off at 10:08. He reports that everything is perfect and working well.
Conferences around the country, including here in Washington today, with the purpose of upsetting the democratic balance of power in the congressional elections that are coming up. Would you care to comment on the task these Republican teachers have, and with what hope they might look towards success in the fall?
Well, I think that I'm sure that I don't know who's giving the leadership direction, but I'm sure that they'll have a varied program.
Most former presidents have put their official papers in libraries in their home states where they are not readily available to scholars and historians who come here to work with the Library of Congress.
Read them and listened to them. Actually, I listened to Mr. Meader's record, but I thought it sounded more like Teddy than it did me, but... so he's annoyed.